be the same thing.
Of Kim's arrival, reporting that his isolated country would discuss establishing a new relationship with the United States. That's significant. In some parts of Singapore, the security is high profile, but appeared to be absent in one of the places where it would have mattered. US and North Korean officials were jostled by the media as they left a hotel where they'd been finalizing details for Tuesday. Trump wants to persuade the North Korean leader to disarm, a deal that eluded his predecessors. And so sanctions will remain until that process is verified, a message reiterated by the US Secretary of State, who says we won't be fooled again.
The V matters. The V matters. We are going to ensure that we set up a system sufficiently robust that we're able to verify these outcomes, and it's only once the V happens that we'll proceed apace. Right? That's what's been missed before.
But that's a process that will eventually have to involve others, says the leader of the campaign to abolish nuclear weapons.
This could be a historic meeting and a beginning of a process towards nuclear disarmament. And so it's definitely has a huge possibility. And I think that's why it's so important that we don't just leave it up to these two men.
Watching from afar and wishing they were here, the leaders of three other countries with important stakes in this summit. South Korea's President Moon Jae-in, Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and President Xi Jinping of China. China, of course, the North's closest ally. And whatever happens here, Xi Jinping will be hoping it remains that way. Orderly, tightly controlled Singapore is playing host to the world's two most unpredictable leaders. And that may mean that the only certainty here is the unexpected. Adrian Brown, Al Jazeera, Singapore.
The White House says the two men will meet alone for the first 2 hours without advisors, just a translator. Our White House correspondent Kimberly Halkett is in Singapore for us with more on what we can expect from this summit.
the U.S. Secretary of State telling reporters that when Donald Trump sits down with Kim Jong-un, North Korea's leader, that Donald Trump will be on a mission of peace. But at the same time, well, there is encouragement here in Singapore that the talks so far leading up to that face-to-face meeting have been moving rapidly and progressing well, that there certainly is only one U.S. objective, and that is complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And until that is achieved, until that is verified, the tough financial sanctions put in place by the United States will remain in place. The meeting itself between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un is expected to be intimate with only the interpreters present. That will expand to a bilateral meeting to include their advisory teams. Later in the afternoon, the U.S. president will hold a media availability to speak to reporters before departing from Singapore late in the evening. It is at that availability where there is no question he will be able to relay whether or not he was successful in setting up the conditions for future dialogue with North Korea.
Well, you'll be seeing a lot from our correspondents in Singapore in the next 24 hours. There's a large team working to make sure that we're on top of all the latest developments. Whitney Hurst, she's our producer for our diplomatic editor, James Bays, now takes you behind the scenes.
I'm here at Al Jazeera's live location for the Singapore Summit. It's actually in a luxury hotel room. This is our view. Our senior cameraman, Joel, calls it the Bentley of live locations. Joel,
yes.
Why do you think we have the best view? How do you know that?
I mean, just have a look around. You've got everything. We've got all the way from the Ferris wheel, Media Center, MBS, City Skyline, Sentosa Island over the back.
And
what could you want?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, fellow Amberlanders. It's an utmost joy to welcome you all to this amazing panel discussion. The topic of our discussion today will be dissecting the Musonge Commission report that came out last week. We'll also be looking at the gas deal between the multinational British-based corporation called New Age and the government of La République du Cameroon. I just want to sincerely thank my panelists, and without further ado, I'm going to introduce my panelists. So there's no specific order. I'm going to welcome Dr. David Makong. He's an international businessman. He's also a philanthropist. He's done a lot of work for Southern Cameroonians. Doctor, thank you. I just can't believe I'm talking to you on this amazing platform. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, my dear brother. Thank you, comrade. And thank you, my brother Patrice Nganang. You have been an amazing figure in our community. You have been a fighter, and you remain one. It's amazing sharing this platform with you. I think we're going to have a good time with all our viewers today. I'm happy to be here for the first time.
Thank you. I absolutely agree. I'm really excited and looking forward to this show. And then, fellow Amberlanders, let me introduce you, Professor Patrice Nganang. He's a writer. He's also a poet. He's a Southern Cameroonian. He's an Amazonian. And I am so thrilled. It's just amazing to have him here. Prof, do you want to talk to Amberlanders?
Oh, yes, always. Meaning I actually listen more to tell the truth. And
Okay.
But I'm very happy to be here. And there are lots of things that connect me with, Dr. Makongo, and particularly an excuse, because there was a mix between the gifts that he had sent to our dear comrades and mine. So, but I think we understand each other. All of those things went to the necessary, to the people in need, and everything is settled.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. So if you're tuning in from Facebook, please share the link. We need to put out our information out there. We are succeeding in this revolution because of information. Information is powerful. So if you join us on Facebook, on SCBC, on Southern Cameroon Broadcasting Television, or SCTV, just share the link and put out the information so that our people can learn more and be educated about our struggle. So this panel discussion will have two segments. In the first segment, we'll be dissecting the Musonge Commission, as I earlier explained. So remember last week, after their meeting in the Northwest region, they came up with an 18-point proposal to the head of state of La République du Cameroon. So I'm not going to list all the points, but the first one they didn't mention was talking about federalism. So it's like an amazing twist in the struggle, because if you remember when this crisis started more than almost 2 years ago, the government never wanted to hear anything about federalism. So what's behind this new stance? What's behind this new point of view? Professor Nganang, may I have your take on this direction?
My reading of that, report is first that it was pretty short. It was pretty short, and it had lots of ideas. And if you actually remember, I think Biya himself was one of the people whom Ahidjo back then had tasked to do something like that. And I'm sure if one compares results of the commission and the Biya commission of before, one will see that they actually are the same thing. The distinction in that 40 years went between the two. So the absence or the presence of something is maybe important or not, but what for me is essential is that it had no consequence, because those ideas are as old as Cameroon. But I also read that as a way old people or older people do politics. Because amongst those ideas, there was one that actually made me laugh. It is the idea that the body of Ahidjo should come back should be brought back to Cameroon. And it was the last idea, it was, Ahidjo was capitalized. It means Biya cannot miss that one. So I'm just wondering, what was Musengi trying to do? And I came to the conclusion that his own game was, let me wash my hand away from this stuff and get out of here as fast as possible. I don't know if he still has his family in the, in the Northwest, in the Southwest, I don't know. But I think he doesn't have his family there anymore. And I don't even think his prospect is to stay in Cameroon, as far as I can, read that.
And I'm very keen to looking at information back home. I watch different TV shows over different platforms. So when I look at people talking back home, especially like the CPDM sympathizers, they say, oh, it's a great initiative. It's something they've been waiting for. And what do you think about that? People are actually supporting this initiative, because personally, it's like if you've read about the documents from the ASC1, the All Anglophone Conference, the first one and the one in Boya and the one in Bamenda, our big brothers did mention all those points, but they were never looked into. They were just tossed into the garbage bin. So Dr. David, from your knowledge about the All Anglophone Conference and to this point, where is the missing link? How did we get here? And where is the problem? Because I feel like there is something missing at each stage of this crisis, and there's like a vicious cycle that we are going round and round. So I would like to get your take on this new perspective.
Let me begin with a laugh, like my brother, Patrice. Let me just begin with a laughter, very big, long one, because look, the Mosonge Commission putting out a report stating that the Ambazonians want, amongst many other things, to have a conversation on federalism. You need to read the word of that document. And then bring back Ahidjo's corpse.
Yeah.
So you wonder, like, are people really dying because they want Ahidjo's dead corpse back to Cameroon, back to Ambazonia? I mean, what is the connection between Ahidjo and Ambazonia? I mean, I don't know. I don't get it. So the question is, who are they trying to deceive? Who are they trying to deceive? Is it Paul Biya? Is it the people of La République du Cameroun? Or is it the people of Ambazonia? Or better still, is it the international community? Mm-hmm. I haven't found an answer. But one point is certain. President Paul Biya is hated by everyone around him. And the only people who tell him the truth are the people of Ambazonia. Mm-hmm. 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 What is that truth? We are tired of living together we want to go away. We want it out. This is the truth. So any stuff about having a conversation on federalism, bringing back Ahidjo's corpse, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. Now, let me ask you this. The Mosonga Commission is supposed to be making rounds. Go to Bamenda, go to Limbe, go to Boya, go to Kumba, go to Manfi, go to Lebialem, go to Nguti, go to Mundemba. This commission only went to Bamenda. One stop.
Bamenda.
Bamenda. And after meeting the people of Bamenda, the commission hurriedly delivers a report to President Paul Biya purporting to be the wishes and demands of the people of Ambazonia. Now you wonder whether the people of Bamenda are a macrocosm of the micro. Ola Mosonga was not president. Right? That it was prepared and hurriedly given to him to append his signature on it so that it is authenticated as the wish and wishes of the people of Ambazonia. He is a victim, like all of us. Pardon him.
Yeah, and you know, there is also something that is very striking, and this is like an open question to you in the panel and to all Ambazonians out there. Remember when this crisis started 2 years ago, you know, Mr. Musonge went to FACO precisely, and they had this xenophobic conference, you know, and they were attacking the Northwesterners for foiling the Anglophone crisis. And all of a sudden, he's running to the Northwest and he's talking about resolving this problem. You know, it's like an oxymoron. How does he present himself like an honest broker in the crisis? So what's your take on that, Professor Nganang?
Now, the thing is also, you have to remember that even during the meeting, when he was meeting those 300 people, there were lots of voices, and I actually remember the voice of Akbar Bala, you know, castigating his actions, saying that, you know, even the formal procedure of that meeting had excluded lots of people, lots of brokers, lots of actors who were on the ground. He did not invite them. Mm-hmm. So even if one locates oneself only Bamenda, you can read the report. It's just in front of me. You'll see that he happily mentions that John Fundi was there. So it is kind of the catchphrase, damn, John Fundi was there too. So kind of here is my fig leaf somehow to the truth. That he has excluded the population itself. So he hasn't listened, for instance, to the victims. He hasn't gone to prison to hear the people who are incarcerated wrongly. He hasn't walked into the families of the people who are wounded, who have lost people. He hasn't actually touched ground to what the pain is. He hasn't actually listened to the victim. And I think if there is one angle through which I will always say one will have to read what is happening in Ambazonia, it is the angle of the victim. You have to remember that the people who are killed are the victims. The people who are incarcerated are the victims. And they have actually one face only. So in general, if you tap into families, you look into each family, you will see that they will connect you to the crisis. You don't really need to go that far. You simply can walk on the street, you take somebody, you say, bring me to your mother or your sister or your brother or your cousin or your nephew. You will already hit somebody who has been touched by the crisis. So you don't have to go to, to a palace, to a meeting room and invite everybody, including John Fundi, to come there. No. Because the crisis is a social crisis and it's a family crisis, first of all. It touches people for real. And he hasn't done that. So if you look at it from a moral point of view, from an ethical point of view, actually I would say he will have to run away. I don't even need to read all the suggestions he gives because, like I've said, they are 40 years old. You simply have to run through all the documents that went through all, the former commissions. You will see them. But the ethical lack is so huge. And I've mentioned the fact that even legally, for instance, the argument of Agbo Bala was clear enough. It is that he hasn't invited the people who had to be there. But ethically, he hasn't touched down on what a crisis is. And the crisis has to be read from the point of view of victims.
Thank you. And I'm going to direct this question specifically to Dr. David Makong. Yes. Some of us, like out here in the diaspora, we had like video excerpts of that conference or that consultative meeting that I had with the so-called Northwest population, and some of our people, our parents were fierce with their criticisms. And when you look at this document, there's like a huge disconnect. The document is not reflecting the way people express themselves in that hall. So, to your opinion, where is the disconnect coming from? What is he missing? Hello, Dr. David?
I'm here, yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, did you get the last question I asked you? So it looks like we're having technical issues with Dr. David's line. So, Prof, I'm going to hang around with you while we try to figure out what's happening on his side. So, like I was saying before, when you look at the document that when we look at the document that the Muslim Commission put out to the public, and when you see the way people spoke to them in the hall, the points that they raised and the discussion that they had, it's like there's like this huge dichotomy. So I get worried. I'm like, where is the disconnect? What are they missing? Do you have anything to say about that?
It's actually, the point of listening. And I will add to what I was saying before, is that when you have a crisis, the most important is, first of all, to listen to the victim. Listen to the victim. And listening has two functions. The first is that self-expression is one way of solving the crisis already, because you have a crisis, because you have people who have not been listened to for decades, meaning their problems have not been heard. They have not been heard individually, they have not been heard institutionally, and they have not even been heard politically. It means in terms of representation, their voice is not there. So the first thing you have to do is to listen to them. And he hasn't listened to them. He hasn't done his job. Now, the second one will be the translation of what they said into a language that will fit into a three pages. So anybody will say it is a difficult task because you have people who are expressing emotions. You have to transfer those emotions into a language that will somehow be readable in the sense of prose. Let us even be clear. Somebody will speak in pidgin. So you have to transfer that into English for somebody who doesn't understand English, or for everybody else to read. It means the person's honesty, integrity, or sincerity will be lost in the process. So that one is a technicality. But the fact of representation is essential, because if there is a crisis, it is because people are not represented in the first place. So if, therefore, the report doesn't even give a voice to what they are saying, it means it is doubling down on their issue. Now, the question now is, a report like this should have one consequence. It should inspire policy. It should inspire action. Apart from the fact that it was published in newspapers, etc., we all know that it will inspire no action that will have a consequence on the ground. Because, first of all, the people don't feel that they are represented in what is said there, since the translation was badly done. Translation not in terms of from English to French, but in terms of the emotion, their wills, their interest, particularly, being visible in the form of the report, and also because the people have taken history in their hands. You see, people are using guns now to enact what they think they want to do. So that disconnect is essential. It is that this report comes too late. It is too little, too late, because people have now understood that it is not through such a report that will have a solution to their problem. It is indeed by taking their problems in their own hands that will have a solution to them.
Yeah, and then you know what? You spoke about something that, it actually beats my imagination, because when this crisis started, and like 4 months into the crisis, the head of state, Paul Biya of La République du Cameroon, what he did was he created this commission. But if you look at if you look at the structure of this commission, they have no authority to impact political change. So, in your opinion, what is behind their thinking? Because like we are trying to psychoanalyze them. We want to put ourselves in their shoes to see how they think. Because obviously, if you ask my own opinion, I feel like they lost it. But then I might be wrong. But I want to know what do you think is in their mind when they have those kind of, because it sounds good, like it sounds good to have like a bilingualism commission. They are trying to copy what we have here in Canada, because after the Canadians, they have like this National Reconciliation Commission with the First Nations, those are the indigenous people of Canada, and then the people of Quebec and the English people of Canada. So it's a very holistic approach. But then that of La République du Cameroon, it lacks that power to influence political change, and that is where the problem is. What do you want to say about that?
But the thing is that as far as Cameroon is concerned, as far as La République is concerned, you have to put that commission next to other things. You have to put it next to the burning of villages, the killing of people, the raping of women, etc. You have to put it next to the thousands of people who are chased from their village and who are in the bush now. These are solutions of power. They are military solutions. So to chase people away from their homes, meaning when people run away from their homes, systematically they tend to go towards one place, the bush, outside of the country, to Nigeria. So it means it is a systematically planned decision to have them go there, because the burning of their villages has as a consequence that they don't stay in the village anymore. So the commission has to be put next to it, as one will say. Solution number one is to increase the military, the creation of base in Bamenda. Solution number two is to have the population move out of the period of crisis for now, war to be waged. Solution number three may be, I don't know, the nomination of Atanganji, who is a hardliner in the crisis, so somebody who actually says there is no problem at all, right? And who is insisting on that despite all the body count. There's no problem. So Atanganji, that will be solution number three. And solution number four can be the commission, where you simply add all the above, bring back, the body of, clean up the streets, cut some trees, greet your grandmothers on the street, be happy to your neighbors, have your breakfast, etc. Those kinds of things. So it is a package that has to be understood as being next to other ideas. What I'm trying to say is that Bia is actually doing like he's throwing pizza on the wall and hoping that some of it's going to stick. So that is what he's trying to do. There's nothing fundamental there. He's trying everything. And as we all saw from the very beginning of the crisis, from the creation of schools, you remember, I think 11 of those schools are at in Bambili alone. You have 11 of them. The creation of schools, the increase of representation in NAM. He's trying every single thing that he has on the table, and the commission is simply one of them. So I don't know that he can solve the problem, because people have decided that they will solve the problem themselves. So the problem is not the solution cannot come from the commission, and it also did not come from all the solutions that he had on the table before. The solution comes from the people themselves, and that is actually the historical moment of Ambazonian, is that people take the history in their hands and decide to solve their problems by themselves.
Yeah, and Prof, talking about history, this is very pertinent, because when I looked at that commission again, because we're still on that segment of the discussion, they did mention about reviewing how the history of the country, I'll put Cameroon in quotes, so they did mention how the history of the country should be presented to the people, Yes, and we our people have been brainwashed for so long, and then all of a sudden there's this rude awakening. We are now bolder, we are stronger. I can't even believe I'm on air talking about the Ambazonian crisis, because I have been educated. I know my rights. I am an Ambazonian. I know my history. So this history was taken away from us, and then we learn our history through the hard way, and we have decided to cling onto it, and because we believe in what we want. We know where we are going, and we understand from where we are coming. So it's a little bit frustrating when they are talking about reviewing the way the history of our country is being taught to the people. And I must say this, because I monitor social media a lot. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. I really monitor, and I infiltrate all the forums from the people from La République and the people from Ambazonia. And this is not being mean in any way. I realize that the Francophones in that country, most of them, like the vast majority, are completely void of the history of that country. What do you say in regards to that? Where is that missing link? What happened there? Because even though we, the Anglophones, we the Amazonians, we were suppressed by the brutal dictator, but then we have an iota of our history. We cannot know our history, you have that feeling, even though it is suppressed, but you know what you want. But all of a sudden, we are out there, we are bold, and we are fierce, we are fighting for our freedom. But on the other side of the Mongo, it's a different story. What is happening?
I think that is idea number one of the commission. That's actually the idea, the first idea, the very first line in terms of suggestion. It is, and I'm going to read it to address the distortion of the political history of Cameroon. That's the first point, that one has to address it. Now, what you are saying is essential, because what you are saying is that inside the specific communities that compose La République du Cameroon, people know their history. So, for instance, the Amazonians, the Southern Cameroonians know their history. The Bamileke people know their history. The Northeast, Hausa, as they are called sometimes, they know their history. You will not actually argue that much with somebody from the North about what happened to them in 1984 or about the rule of Aidjo, etc. They know it because they lived through that. What is lacking and has lacked always is a history that will connect all those four political tribes of Cameroon. And I would say the same about, the Beti. They know their history. Now, in the middle of it, there is a question of interest, the interest of knowing history, because history has to, on the one hand, be taught by the state, and on the other, known by the community. So in families, your father, your mother, etc., tell you what happened to you while teaching you your mother tongue. But at the same time, that is community history. At the same time, you go to school and you learn history that is taught in books. So that is state history. Now let us take state history. We know ourselves that Biya, who is the president of La République du Cameroun, sentenced Aidjo to death. We know that the body of Aidjo is in Senegal. Can that be taught in schools, in high schools? I'm not sure it can. I'm not sure a teacher can actually stand in front of kids and say, the first president is Aidjo, he was sentenced to death by Paul Biya, and his body is in exile. And before Aidjo, you had Unyobe, who was sentenced to death and he was buried in concrete, and he was killed in the jungle. I'm not sure you can actually teach that easily in schools, you see. So in the state, there is no interest, and it is an impossible task. There is no interest in teaching political history, even history, without having a political change. It is simply impossible, because a teacher will be caught between two burning stones. The students will be frightened. The teacher who is a civil servant, will be afraid of losing his or her job, right? So inside the state machine, there is no interest, no human interest, no political interest, no factual interest in teaching history. So therefore, because the state has no interest, the communities take upon themselves, the Amazonians, to teach the history to each other. The Bamileke people take upon themselves to teach their history to each other. The Northeast do the same, and the Beti do the same, but they do not talk with each other about it. The consequence would be that a Francophone in general, which would mean a Northeast, a Beti, a Bamileke, will not know the history of the Amazonians. And as well, an Amazonian would not know the history of the Beti people, etc., because there is no between communal conversation around our common history. And the state itself has no interest in teaching history to people.
Yeah, and there's something that also took my attention off. I read they did make mention of the superiority complex of Francophones. Is that not astonishing? Is that not astonishing?
I will not call it the superiority complex. I will simply say that I will call it in general. I call it anteriority. I call it the anteriority of Francophone, which means that because Francophones, became independent earlier in 1960. And also it adds to it that, you have a majority of the population that is French-speaking.
Yeah.
But mostly because they became independent in 1960, they took upon themselves to name their country La République du Cameroun. It leaves no room for something else. So it means Ambazonia will be maybe let's say, the Democratic Republic of Cameroon, but of Southern Cameroon. You see, it becomes an alternative because the hegemonic name has been taken already. There is, a metaphor I tend to use for that. It is a metaphor of people sitting in a train, in a wagon, and you have 5 people, and the 6th one joins the conversation. So because Francophones were first on that game of nomination, they claim anteriority and they build a certain ethical ground on it, which is false, which is wrong, which has no value. To come back to the metaphor of the train, if you buy a ticket, you enter into the train, you meet people in that train, there is something fundamental. The train doesn't belong to you. You've bought only a ticket. The train doesn't belong to you at all. It means what it means. Cameroon as an entity was created by the Germans. Even if one says, I come from this tribe, from that tribe, that particular country, even the name Cameroon comes from Portuguese. So it means nobody can say it is mine. Yet, so the tensions of that anteriority can be lived every single day on the street, can be seen in the violence that is unleashed on people, can be seen in the behavior of the military, can be seen in the state, in the relation of the state to France, for instance. The fact that in schools, again, from the point of view of the state, in schools, it is always taught that Cameroon was independent in 1960. But of course, you have 30% of the population that would disagree with it. And it is the state, it is not communities doing that, it is the state doing that. It is that you will have in books, they will teach you Cameroon was independent on January the 1st, 1960. It took the revolt of Ambazonians for people to actually realize, wait a minute, Cameroon was independent twice. You see, these are simple sentences, and these are sentences people learn in school already. And they erase one part of history, and they build a hegemony, which is the complex of hegemony is the complex of superiority, if you want. It is the scientific name to describe a certain superiority of a group over another one, and it creates a particular a cultural superiority, and it creates a particular behavior, it creates a particular politics, it creates a particular policy. So that state position in history creates such behaviors.
Yeah, and I just want to really thank you for that clarification, because it's really profound. It makes a lot of sense to me, and I hope the televiewers and the Ambazonians out there are really getting something out of this panel discussion. Ever since this crisis started, that later on moved to a huge revolution.
Yes,
from one leader to the next, from Dr. Balar, from His Excellency Sisiku, and Dr. Sako Samuel, who is our present acting president, they have clearly articulated that the Ambazonian crisis is not about road infrastructure. It's not about telecommunication network. It's not about health system, because all those issues are all over that triangle called Cameroon. You get what I mean? So it's been said over and over again, but apparently they don't get it. So I tend to feel like, do we need to change the way we present our information from the leadership point of view, or the other side is just being stubborn? I don't know. Do you have to say something about that?
No, I think that at a certain point, one needs to say that history written from the point of view of those 4 communities has to be presented. One of the things that is lacking, and I think it is being changed step by step, it is to have a history of Amazonia written for people to read it and understand what that history is, to understand who are those people, how do they look at the world in general, what are their data, what is their chronology. Because then one will see that at the root of all of it. It's something, indeed, if you think of it, that Francophones and Anglophones share together, which is that the UN dropped the ball on what was a German colony and never became the colony of somebody else. Became a trustee and a mandate of the UN, of the League of Nations, and the League of Nations gave that trustee, that mandate to France and to England. But in the case of those two different countries, they were ruled differently. Now, if you look amongst the Francophone political class of the 50s and 60s, you will realize, and I always underline that, none of them came to the idea of going to France to ask for independence. It didn't make sense. They went to New York because that is where the decision was taken. That is where, even now, that is where the decision has to be taken, which is to say that Cameroon actually was a country under mandate. But the problem is that from the Francophone side, it was ruled as if it was a French colony. And for La République du Cameroun, it's ruled still as if it is a French colony. And it extends on everybody, on English-speaking Cameroonians too, on Ambazonians too, who are actually governed as if they were Francophones. So Cameroon in general has always been treated as if it is a colony. But the problem is that the people amongst the Francophone who said it were all murdered. All of them. So it is a particular delight for anybody who is interested in history to see that in 2016, there are still Cameroonians who awaken to the truth that the UN dropped the ball on Cameroon. And that is what Ambazonians are doing, meaning they are addressing the very root of the Cameroonian question in general. But they are targeting specifically Ambazonia to say that our problem here is that we had a functioning state. We had a functioning government. We had institutions that were running. We had the police, etc. So we cannot be treated like a colony because we are not a colony. That is the point. You see, Francophones saying that during the 50s, all of those who say that were murdered, the Umyobe, the Mumie, they say that during the 50s and 60s, and they were murdered. So that's why Cameroonians listen. They are stunned. They say, oh my goodness, people, Francophones. Oh my goodness, people bring that argument again. That argument is not dead. Because for Francophones, the argument was dead already. It was dead at arrival because France never gave it a chance. So one will see, and that's why I say, be patient a little bit. We will see how it works out with Ambazonians. Because Francophones have a bedrock where that argument actually can sit easily. We agree on that. Cameroon was never a colony after the Germans. Because as we can see with the mismanagement of the French in La République du Cameroun is something else. But on the English side, it did not happen because the English side had its own government, was supposed to be led to independence normally, but never was given the chance to voice, to do what all African countries did in 1960, to vote for independence. So Ambazonians were never given that chance, and they're asking for it now. That is the root of the problem. That is the root of the problem. The moment it's going to be explained step by step, clearly, people will understand.
And I totally get that, and I really understand what you're trying to say. So, because there is now an international pressure, and it's mounting, from the Twitter sphere, and you're doing a great job with that, and I really have to thank you for what you're doing. So, I feel like, what do you think we Ambazonians should do right now that can push this thing over the cliff?
First of all, continue doing what you're doing. Whatever you do, keep on doing that. That is the first thing. Don't change the game you are playing. Don't change the system. It's working. It's very good. Let's imagine for a moment that one was still on the level of those debates between lawyers and teachers of 2016. It would have been set a long time ago. It would have been closed, chapter closed.
Absolutely.
At one point or another, have you seen the amount of lawyers and teachers who are on strike amongst the Francophones? It takes, maybe a week or so, and they're out. They're out. You see? So it means whatever you do, continue doing that. And what you do is that nobody knows where the next battlefield is going to be. Nobody knows what city is going to hit next. Nobody knows what idea is going to be problematic next. Because the root problem is the same. We agree on that. It is the UN drop the ball. That is the root problem. And everybody, you can go to Bamenda, to Boya, to Limbe, etc. Everybody will agree on that. It is that is the root problem, and which is the basis for independence. And that is the root problem. It is that during the 60s, when every other African country had a chance to vote upon that, Southern Cameroonians did not. They had to choose between joining Nigeria or joining, Eastern Cameroon. And that is not a choice. That is actually a lie. So coming back to that particular issue where everybody agrees, the point is now, how do you force those in power to come to the problem that's yours? You don't force them by dragging them because you don't have guns, meaning you use not to. You don't have tanks, etc. And they show that they are of bad faith. They show that they don't want to do anything, etc. that will solve that issue. And particularly, we'll talk about it, oil, etc. adds to the difficulty of solving it. Right? But what you do is that you simply make it impossible for them to govern the path that they claim to be theirs. Because you open what they call 1,000 battlefields every single way, and they never know when it's going to hit. There is one day one says, okay, for the 20th of May, we want to have a peaceful National Unity Day. There we go. It is the bloodiest in the history of Cameroon. One says, oh my goodness, now we'll rest a little bit. Maybe one will actually think about, sending kids to visit their families during the weekend. There we go. This DO has been captured. One is rescuing a little bit and say, okay, maybe we'll go to school now. There we go. This school has been burned, etc. So one never knows where it's going to happen. It means those thousands of battlefields address one singular issue, and as long as it's not addressed, the problem is not going to be solved.
Yeah, and there is a certain group of Ambazonians that they have this aspect of uncertainty with this revolution, and because of that, they decide to go mellow. You don't see them. They use fake accounts, or they are not even out there. But I have made efforts so many times to talk to them on a one-on-one basis. They understand the struggle, they support the struggle, they identify with our strong conviction, but they don't have that boldness. They don't want to, stand up and speak out. And this is my own point of view. I just believe that the moment when the good people stop speaking the truth, that's when the few bad people will take the world. So, I believe you have a huge international experience. So what are you going to say about those Ambazonians who identify with our cause, but then they stay quiet because of that lingering uncertainty? How do you want to encourage them to step up to the plate and join us to fight wholeheartedly?
Okay, here is one phase of that issue. And one phase of that issue is class. If you want, it is class. It's not even age, because I know people who are 85 years old who identify with Ambazonia. It is class. So you take a lawyer, you ask that lawyer if he's Ambazonian or so. The lawyer will say, I'm Southern Cameroonian. I'm not Ambazonian. And I've talked to even some of the leaders of the fight. I've asked them straightforward, are you Ambazonian? Do you identify with it? And the person, I won't name, but the person will say, no, I don't identify with Ambazonia. I am Southern Cameroonian. It's essential to underline that. It is equally essential to underline that amongst the youth, you have a universal identification with Ambazonia. So which means what? It means in the future, you just need to take 10 years and you'll have a universal identification with Ambazonia. You can transfer that, for instance, to the US. During the 50s and 60s, somebody like Martin Luther King, you can't believe it, he never named himself African American. Of course, he was not an African American. He understood himself as a Negro. And that's how he presented himself all the time. Can you imagine it? Martin Luther King presented himself all the time as a Negro. And it took the younger generation of his time, Stokely Carmichael, etc., to have him even start before his death, identify himself as black. Martin Luther King Jr. saying that he's black was a revolution an internal revolution. The same phenomenon can be seen amongst Southern Cameroonians, where you have the most activists who identify as Ambazonians, and those who, because of class, and I take Martin Luther King because he was middle class, because of class, do not self-identify as Ambazonian. And the issue is this. The real issue, I think the turning point, or I think the decision maker, the game changer, is violence. It's a decision about violence, around violence. Do you accept that some people can use guns to impose the rule of Ambazonia? Or do you think that non-violence would impose the rule of Ambazonia? Do you think that a brutal change will make it possible for Ambazonia to appear? Or do you think that a gradual evolution through a dialogue with BIA will make Ambazonia happen? Most young people, it seems to me, understand, frankly, that BIA is not going to be the person to decide that Ambazonia will exist. I think it makes sense to think that. They understand that they have to take it upon themselves to make it exist. And you have people who are well settled in Yaoundé, who have professions in Douala, who have business interests here and there, who need a passport to travel, they don't want to be hassled, right? They understand that they have to dialogue with BIA to get to where they want to get and keep their business and have Ambazonia running. The two things at the same time. So they need non-violence. You see, so those two constituencies are the two parts of the body of any revolution. You have to deal with those two. Depending on the victory, you have the side that is slow pace, join. And of course, if you don't have victory, that side will say, we're always wiser. Guess what? We always felt it would not work. We are at least Southern Cameroonian. So you have people who are like that. You have to live with it. That's what I'm trying to say. It's part of any revolution, and you can't erase it. It is part of it.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to ask you a very specific question, but then I'll take it from my own perspective and my own view of the struggle, because it got to a point where, and I must confess to everybody, I did not initially identify myself as an Ambazonian.
There we go.
I did not. And it's okay. It's very okay to come out at any point in time to join the train, because the train is fast moving. So, and you know what? It took a while for me, and I had to reflect on our history. Can you imagine? Like, I remember, and there's this element of hypocrisy that the Paul Biya regime used in that country. When our big brothers, our big sisters, our fathers, our parents, they stood up in Yaoundé and asked for an Anglo-Saxon university. They were met with total brutality. They were killed. Yeah. And those Anglophones, like Dorothy Njoma, who were already teachers at the University of Yaoundé 1, they were against the revolution. They were against the demand for an Anglo-Saxon university. And guess what? When the university was finally opened in Boyer, Dorothy Njoma was made the vice-chancellor. It is so annoying. And then there's also the aspect of multipartism. People died in the Northwest. People died in Bamenda. People are handicapped till today because they stood for multipartism. And, when it was finally given, there are like more than 30 parties in La République du Cameroon. They did not fight for it. I went to the University of Boyer, believe me, and the whole University of Boyer, it has been Francophonized. You stay in the Minicité, you can barely hear people speak English around you. People are speaking French all over. But our parents fought for that university to come on board. It's been from one issue to another. We also have the GCE board. It was a huge tussle to have the GCE board. And then it's like whenever the Anglophones fight for something, the other part over the Mungo, they just stay mute. And then when we have it, we all enjoy. And that, for me, that was the breaking point. And I said, you know what? I'm done with this. We have to go our separate ways. So I had to put all those into perspective, and then I made my decision to become a full-fledged Ambazonian. So I want to put this question straight up to you. What was that turning point for you? What was the breaking point?
The thing is that I'm a writer, and I understand a writer to be somebody who looks at life always from the point of view of the victim, from the point of view of the victim of history, from the point of view of the victim of power. And as a consequence, the writer looks at history from the point of view of minorities. When you present the situation of schools, it is a matter of perspective. You have to, it took me years to understand that, because I went to school or to university at the University of Yaoundé. Back then, it was the so-called bilingual university. So it took me years to understand that the university, because I was always, very good at university, I was always #1, etc. So I never thought a lot about the people who were failing. So now there is a system for those people who fail. It is called grillé. Grillé. So when you
So what does that mean for our televiewers? What does that mean?
Yes, it is. Yeah, exactly. It is when you fail twice, you change your faculty. So for instance, if you were in law and you didn't pass twice to the next level during my years, you didn't pass from first year to second year twice, you failed exam twice, you'll have to go to the humanities. You won't continue law anymore. You have to go to the humanities. And if there you fail twice again, you have to go to, if you're admitted there, maybe to natural sciences. If you fail twice there again, you have to go.
That was profound.
That was profound. So it lasted, I think, until the creation of the Anglo-Saxon University. I'm going to tell you the story from the point of view of a victim. It is that because from 1961 to 1994, you didn't have an Anglo-Saxon university. The consequence, of course, is that anybody who had a GCE had to do graduate education either in Yaoundé, that bilingual university where you had that system, or go to Nigeria, because otherwise you had nothing. So you couldn't do post-secondary school normal education. And if you went to the University of Yaoundé, the bilingual university, if you, for instance, were strong in math, you had to learn French to understand what was taught. And caught them of having to fail and change that French, or you fail. You can imagine that any child who is bright will fail. Or the other decision was that if you don't want to fail like that, you go to the English department. So then there you will have education that's taught to you in English only. So in Yaoundé, in the university system of Cameroon, there was only one department where you could actually have everything in English, having had your whole normal school, high school, etc., in English. The consequence, of course, that not only so thousands of Amazonians, Southern Cameroonians, Anglophones failed, and it installed a particular understanding of what it means to be an Anglophone in the mind of Francophone. It is that their people were stupid because they always fail, because they are the ones who always fail, you see. So when you have a system like that, it creates not only reality, it creates also the perception of reality in the mind of people. The other consequence is that it created an Anglophone diaspora. You need to be outside of Cameroon to see that, because one of the strongest diaspora you have outside from Cameroon are Southern Cameroonians. In Nigeria, #1, in South Africa, in Canada, in the US, etc. Simply because Cameroon from 1960, and we are talking about 33 years, from 1960 or 1961 to 1994, did not educate Southern Cameroonians. It is, what I'm talking about is slavery. It is that L'Arbre du Cameroon wanted Southern Cameroonians to become slaves. And they refused. They are refusing. I think I've spoken so much that I can disappear now. I simply let my brother talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to grave on the indulgence of the televiewers that we had some technical glitches, but I think everything is now fine, and we are happy to have Dr. David Makong back on the platform. So I'm just gonna start bombarding with a series of questions. Yeah, it's amazing to have you. It's amazing to have you back on board, and we are still talking about the Musonge Commission and the press release they had out there to the public after their so-called consultation in the Northwest region. So there's also this aspect of definition of the word terrorism and secessionists. It came out there strong, and ever since this crisis started, there's been that use of word. I think if you have to Google Cameroon and the most used word in that country, for 2 years now, it's going to be dialogue, secessionists, and terrorism. So Dr. David, can you throw more light to that? Why do you think they have to talk about the definition or the redefinition of terrorism or secessionists?
Thanks for having me back, and let me straight to the answer. See, if you want to hang a dog, give it a bad name. If you want to hang a dog, give it a bad name. So with British Southern Cameroonians haven't opened their eyes to see the reality of their situation in this unholy union. In order to intimidate them, you go ahead and put in place a law. You call it anti-terrorism law, and then you give your own definition of who a terrorist is and the acts that constitute terrorism. And then you start catching people and trying them under terrorism law. So yes, you give a dog a bad name so as to hang the dog. But see, the world knows, and you're on the nose, that Ambazonians are not terrorists. Okay? They know that Ambazonians are not terrorists. We are not. I'm not even trying to delve into the distinction between who a terrorist is and who a terrorist is not, because that's gimmick. Okay? That's just branding, and nobody's going to buy that. International community has not bought it. They wanted to sell it to them. They have not bought it. Cameroonians have not bought it. And we are not going to sell it again. We're not going to do any publicity for the Cameroon government on what terrorism is and what is not. So, pardon me, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to give them any platform to talk about terrorism, because that's not what this is about. We are here today because the people of British Southern Cameroon have found their voices and they have found their land. They came from somewhere, and that is where they want to go. That is where they are, and that's where they will live. I was telling someone something today. Ambazonians don't need anyone, any foreign government to take their independence or to grant them independence. Our independence is upon us because it's a matter of right. It's a birthright. And nobody is going to deny us. History facts are so stubborn that each time you Google, you find out what and where Cameroon came from. You see that there were two countries. One baptized in 1960 by the French, and the other one baptized in 1961 by the British. And these two countries, one was annexed by another country that had just been liberated. And after 56 to 57 years of the holy, can we stay, it has not worked. And now this generation says enough is enough. We are not going to pass down this mess to another generation. So I think we are going to clean it up. We were born for this. When you live in America or you live in Europe, these are countries that were also liberated, by people. And that's why we all live there today. So I think it's a matter of pride to be counted as a liberator of British Southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. And I'm just proud to be one, man. What's the next question?
I'm also very proud to be one, and I thank you. Yes. So we're going to be switching to the next segment of the panel discussion, but I'm going to end this first segment with this aspect of arrogance in the way the crisis was managed. So the Musonge Commission did make mention of the arrogance from the administrators of La République du Cameroon. There are so many instances that we could see the arrogance of the administrators. I'm just going to cite two of them. You remember when the Minister of Justice, I can't remember his name because I don't even care. So he told our lawyers. Yeah, he told our lawyers that when they'll be hungry, they'll go back to the courts. It's so annoying, and you would think that in a normal country, somebody like that will be taking up his functions. I just can't understand that he's still keeping his function till today, and I just think some of those malpractices are the driving force. They fuel our energy to propel this struggle to the next level. I'm just going to have you to take your take on that, Professor Patrice, and then we can move over to the next segment.
No, I think now it is not my time to talk. I've been salivating very
okay,
much.
That's fine. That's fine.
But since my brother, Dr. Makongo is drinking, I will quickly say that, whatever power in Yaoundé has, it is not only arrogance; it is rooted in what I call anteriority, and we may want to remember that. It is that Laurent Esso speaks from inside a position of hegemony, and to understand hegemony, maybe I'm going to take another example. I'll take the example of the U.S. because the U.S. behaves
for Martin. Amazing. Yeah. So, it's the bully mentality, and
exactly. There we go.
Ambazonians have demonstrated that they can't be bullied anymore. Now, see, I was telling someone there are lots of Ambazonians in the Cameroon army, in the Cameroon police force, and in the Cameroon gendarmerie force. Now, these Anglophones, most of them have had their own villages burnt down. Exactly. They have their own parents living in the bushes right now as we speak. Now, what do you think? Are they going to sit back in Yaoundé or in Douala, holding the gun to protect La République, or they are going to join their parents in the bushes? I'm not going to give an answer to that. Let La République answer that question.
But I think the answer, just to be practical here, the answer is the very existence of this TV channel. Yesterday, I was posting on my Facebook page some of these, because you may have forgotten it, on September the 30th, Issa Chiroma, the Minister of Communication of La République du Cameroon, went to all TV stations in Cameroon, both in English and French, and he told them that they shall not give any space to what they call secessionists. Otherwise, the TV station will be closed down. So that was clear. No, you shall not give any room, or if you do, then you have no TV station. Guess what? We are speaking here and people are listening. It means you answered back. It means you created a platform to express exactly the kind of opinion that is not possible there. I'm going to be, totally concrete here. We have the interim president, Dr. Sako. Before him, we had Ayuk Tabi. None of them gave a single interview, or were even asked to give a single interview in any media in La République du Cameroon. And yet, what is dominating conversation there? It is what they do.
Absolutely.
it should make sense anywhere to actually simply understand their point of view and say, okay, let us break it down. Tell us, who are you? What are you doing? What's your prospect? What's your plan? Nobody even tried, you see. So it shows not only that the narrative has been totally controlled, but what it shows is that you answered back and created a space for them to express that narrative. And that is essential. That's the good news, actually. And it changed the landscape totally.
Brother Patrick, I think, Patrice, you're right. And if I may add something to what you just said, is that each time Minister Issa Chiroma opens his mouth, he says something that promotes the struggle.
Exactly.
So he shouldn't stop opening his mouth. Please keep talking. We are listening. I'm moving forward.
So just to add to it, because it is a beautiful story that we are having here. And I can tell you that our children, our neighbors, Francophones, even if they don't join as you think they are not, they are so jealous. And they will teach us, they will copy it, they will try to do every single thing the same. Because it is a beautiful story. Let us take all the decisions that Biya took. Let's even forget Issa Chiroma because he's a lapdog. Let's take all the decisions that Biya took starting November the 20th, including his declaration of war on November the 30th, 2017. But let us start earlier, November the 20th, 2016, when he decided to arrest or to actually, when the police in Moya arrested all those lawyers and beat them. Now, the police commissioner was captured yesterday of that Muya station. You see, all those decisions, none of them had as a consequence to stop the fight, to stop the struggle. None of them. Zero. On the contrary, they all escalated the struggle. All of them.
See, now, when you say this, you give me more fuel to say something else. I think I wrote on my Facebook page that the gravest mistake in this struggle was the abduction of President Sisiko Ayub Tabe.
There we go.
In Nigeria. That was the gravest mistake.
There we go.
If President Biya had good advisors around him and around this Anglophone problem, as they put it, they would never have advised him to abduct President Ayub Tabe. See, amongst all the activists, this is the only guy who was using the Bible. This is the only guy who said, no, we have to believe in God. We are going to win. He never believed in the barrel of the gun. He never believed in the strength of the bullet. He believed in the Bible. And this is the man they chose to abduct. And now the struggle has had so many heads. Everybody is a leader. Everybody is a leader in the struggle. Now, who are they going to talk to? Who are they not going to talk to? This is the problem.
Yeah.
Now, even to show President Ayub Tabe so that people can see him and say he's alive and pipe down, they aren't even doing that. Who is advising President Paul Biya, for God's sake? Do you know, Patrice? Tell me.
I think I was saying even his silence. Okay, let us maybe the way I read that is that until now, until November the 20th, 2016, Biya has always been the master of his calendar. There is one moment where there was a temptation. There was a sense that he can actually miss that ball. It was in 2008 when he had to rush back and he had to kill all those youngsters on the street. It was a massacre. That's the only time. But for the first time, he is not master of his calendar. So anything he does, when you are not a master of your calendar, what happens? Anything you do backfires. Anything he does backfires. Let us take, the example of May the 20th. It is Unity Day. It is, a day where he simply has to go and TV shows only Yaoundé. TV doesn't show Bamenda, doesn't show Marwa, it shows only Yaoundé.
Correct.
It is the bloodiest Unity Day of the whole of Cameroonian history. The bloodiest. You see. So even a day where he simply has to walk and sit and go back home is the bloodiest. So he doesn't master his calendar anymore. Why doesn't he master his calendar anymore? Because Ambazonians took their history in their own hands. Correct. Because they are now the agents of their own history. So they dictate the calendar of Cameroonian history in general, and specifically their own calendar. And I find it is great. It is amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, gentlemen, I'm having an awesome time on the platform, and I just want to hope that the Ambazonians out there watching from Facebook, from SCBC, from SCTV are also enjoying the show. And please, you know what? Just continue to share the link, put out the likes out there. Information is power, because we are succeeding because we've empowered ourselves with information. So I just want us to move now to the next segment of this panel discussion. We will be talking about the natural gas convention between the Colonial Republic du Cameroon and it's amazing. It's a British multinational corporation called New Age. They do natural gas exploration in most of sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Eastern Africa. And when this communique came out, the government of La Republique did not mention it in any media outlet. I actually saw it on Twitter. The UK government did make mention of this agreement on Twitter. I don't know. It's a little bit shocking that the La Republique du Cameroon stays mute, and then it is the British government that announces this convention. to your opinion, Dr. Makongo, what do you think is what do you think is the British government trying to achieve? What's behind their mind? Remember, we are trying to psychoanalyze their mindset. What do you think is behind their thinking?
Well, great question. And I think most people who have tuned in tonight are here because they found this topic extremely educative and extremely important. Well, I think as someone in the industry, I would say what Great Britain had behind their mind, prompting them to publish this information, make it public, is because actually offshore Cameroon is divided into two hydrocarbon basins. You have the Douala Basin and the Rio de Rey Basin. Now, the subject matter of this discussion has to do with the Rio de Rey Basin, which is right in Victoria. So they understand that this project does not only implicate French Cameroon, it also has implications with British Southern Cameroon. I think that's the reason.
So, I'm just going to ask you again. I'm going to stay with you for a while because we've been talking for quite a bit. So, the announcement looked a little bit economical, but then to my understanding, I believe there's like a political undertone. Do you see that?
Well, the only political undertone I see in this deal is negative for Britain and negative for La République du Cameroon. See, you cannot sell what you do not own, and you cannot buy from someone who doesn't own what you are buying. Now, the political ramifications of this deal are so negative that, looking at it from the perspective of a British Southern Cameroonian, or looking at it from the perspective of La République du Cameroon, or still looking at it from the perspective of the people of Great Britain and the international community, you will see that corporate greed and corporate politics have been lined with government politics to deprive the people of their natural rights. Now, is this a political plus? No, this is a political minus. Now, if you tear into the deal, you pierce through it and peel the onion, you're going to see that it is an empty deal. What is Cameroon having in this deal? 20% of this project is all that the government of Cameroon is having. 80% of this deal belongs to the equity group. Now, what people might not have known is that as far back as 2015 in March, a similar deal was done where the Cameroon government pocketed over 250 million, and people, this was never announced. The British did not announce it. The Cameroon government never announced it, But right now, with Ambazonians, reading everything, conducting research everywhere, the world is aware that everything that belongs to Ambazonia, Ambazonia will find. Everything that you are hiding from Ambazonia, Ambazonia will dig it out. So I feel so bad for the shareholders, of these foreign multinationals, because when CEOs and general managers make decisions to invest shareholders' money into projects like this, they have to evaluate the risk. They have to do their due diligence. You have to do a technical due diligence and a legal due diligence. Now, the technical due diligence would have led them to know that this project actually, which falls on block 7, because there are 3 blocks that are implicated in this deal. Now, this deal is specifically on block 7 that falls within British Southern Cameroon, Amazonia. You cannot do a deal with La République du Cameroon at the time that Ambazonia is clamoring for its independence. Before you do such a deal, you need to seek the consent of the shareholders, because Ambazonians are not going to sit around and watch their own rights being eroded and corroded by La République du Cameroon while our people are hungry and dying on the streets. So if you have a deal like this one, where the CEO or the general manager of the
I think we're having network issues with Dr. David.
Yes.
Okay, Prof, I'm just going to hang on to you again now. So,
no problem.
Looking at this deal, like what he's trying to say, and for a huge investment like this to take place, you need to engage the local community. You need to engage the local and international stakeholders. People need to do like an environmental impact assessment, and all these things are not done. We have no idea. We have just no information on what is actually happening. And you would think that for a multinational corporation of that standard, they'll be transparent with such an information. I tend to feel like they believe they can do anything in Africa or in most of developing countries around the world. And all of a sudden, they are presenting this new face, because I went to their website and they're talking about helping girls, children education in Africa, and they present that kind of humanitarian face, in their portfolio. So what can you advise the leadership of our struggle, like Dr. Samuel Sako and the entire interim government? What do you think they should be looking at this critical point in time? Because personally, from my own perspective, I see this as a distraction, but I don't know what you think.
Okay, let's maybe say quickly that any advice I will give to Dr. Sako, I will not give it publicly here. So
okay,
that one has to be said. It is essential that I say that, because I'm not that kind of a person who speaks outside.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The life of people are actually online now, and they're dying really daily. And one has to be, totally considerate, but also very prudent. But at the same time, I was, you remember that I was tasked to, present the case of, in Amazonia in, many places, etc. And one of the things that I always underline was that so far the discussions have been based on human rights, and I brought it to the level of judicial discussions, which is where it started, with Agbobala, etc. But even Agbo did not address the issue of the UN, the League of Nations disposition towards, towards Southern Cameroons. It is something, for instance, that rather Harmony Bobga was doing, which is to bring us back to the roots of the issue.
Yeah.
What happened 2 days ago was that we have hit the most important element from the point of view of language Cameroon, which is oil. You remember that oil is in Amazonia. Oil has been managed by La République du Cameroon always as a state secret since Aïdjo. Maybe we tend to forget it, but Aïdjo's advice was that one should forget oil and concentrate on agriculture, etc. It did not mean that he forgot oil. And you may, even if you see amongst the portfolio of Tanden Muna's first ministerial position in 1973 was to be Minister of Oil. So we are tapping into something that is at the heart not only of what is called state bilingualism, state unification, etc. We are tapping into the resources of tyranny. Biya lives off oil. It is what fuels his political position. It is what he uses to finance his political position. There are some footnotes to it. For instance, his nephew, Mang Vodon Vodo, died, I think it was in January or February or so. He was probably killed by a viper. He was in an office of the military. He died in Limbe. It is in Amazonia, let us call it a war zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
What will the nephew of the president, who is a soldier, do in a war zone particularly at the place where there is oil.
Oil.
What will you do there? I mean, if not to collect the money for his uncle.
Absolutely.
His job is to look at the cash. So we are tapping into the 20%, the 30% or the 40% that since 1973, when oil was discovered in Cameroon, has been actually financing the tyranny that we are living under. So by signing that treaty, it was 1 week ago or 3 weeks ago, the Minister of Water and Energy uncovered the real problem, because there is no war on earth nowadays that's not fought because of resources. If there is a war that's fought because of human rights, it's going to be solved quickly. You want your human rights? Fine.
Yeah.
You will have them. You want the right to vote? No problem. But the moment you hit resources, you will have a war that will last 10 years. That is what is happening. Here is my reading. It is that here is a government, and you remember the former Minister of Energy, it is Nganang, who was arrested.
I do remember.
Who was arrested. He is now in Konengi. And it is the person who came after him who signed the deal now quickly. And even if you look at the amount of money that is put on the table, it is not that much. It is not a huge deal. They trapped the Brits. They trapped the Brits into that just to cover up, because the Brits have been vocal in support of Amazonia. They trapped the Brits into signing for something that will make, because it is not the British government, by the way, it is a company, and companies have the freedom to sign whom they want.
But just so you know, that release came out of the British government Twitter feed. They actually tweeted that out like a couple of days ago, and to me it was astonishing, because the company did not mention it. You could find it online, but having the government of the United Kingdom put that out there while the government of La République du Cameroon stays mute is pretty profound, don't you think so?
I saw the tweet myself. It is a Twitter account called UK for Cameroon. One has to follow what Twitter account it is. If it is the official state account, Twitter account of the British government, Foreign Office or something like that, or Office of Economy, I don't know. But it was under UK for Cameroon. I don't know what interest group that is. But what I know is that it is a company. A company has the right to do business every single where. But what I also can imagine is that the Cameroonian government is desperate in having an inroad into the British assault against the violation of human rights in Amazonia. You remember that when the person was tasked, you remember that the person was tasked in Britain for Africa, when she came to southern Cameroon, she was not received by Biya. She came at the same time when the German minister of foreign affairs, somebody who starts with Africa, came. Biya received only the German man, but the British lady was not received by him. In fact, she met Agbobara, she met other stakeholders on the ground, but she actually was only received by the minister of
external relations,
Mbela Mbela. Exactly. But Biya did not receive her. He received the German guy. You see, the contentious relation between Biya and the English-speaking powers extends to the U.S. So I read that contract as an inroad that the Biya people are trying to have inside a machine of English-speaking powers that are lining up to hit them.
Yeah, Dr. David, are you on? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you guys. I'm
Awesome.
sorry, you guys, I'm in Asia, so network here is very poor. I wish I were in America. So
well, we are still thankful to have you. We are still thankful to have you on board. It's a pleasure to always have you back. Thank you. you keep trying to hook up with us again. So that's the true Amber spirit. Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
So yeah, I just want to go back now to the government of La République du Cameroon with specific reference to this release from this company. Is there a strategy from their perspective? Why do you think they are quiet about it? They are not really talking about it. Why? Are they afraid of amberlanders? What is going on? What do you think is going on?
No, there are several reasons. I mean, first, if you look at the structure of the deal, you know, it's a very hopeless and useless deal, right? It only favors the multinationals and greatly, it's a great loss for Cameroon and mostly to the people of Ambazonia. Why am I saying this? If you look at the financial or the commercial terms of the deal, now 1.5 billion is earmarked to be spent for the project. Now, there is no definition as to how this money is going to be spent, on what. Now, it is very important for people to know that this project is about a floating liquefied natural gas project, meaning that the gas that will be exploited offshore, transformed offshore, transported offshore, and sold offshore. You get it?
That is intense.
That's the nature of the deal. That is it. I want people to get this point very clear. Let me make it very short. The gas that will be produced offshore. It will be transformed offshore. It will be transported offshore, and it will be sold offshore. So if the British government did not publish the facts of this deal, you would never know that our gas is being sold on the... You would never know. You would never know. Now, come to the terms of the deal itself.
No.
What are the taxation requirements to whom
I think the network is still a little bit shaky. This line is breaking.
are the investors going to pay the taxes? Is it to the government in Yahoo? Is it to the or to whom are they going to add in this deal, showing the local the number of local from British Southern Cameroon or from our part who are going to be employed? There is no knowing what quantity of services from our side, from the owners of the project side, that the multinationals are going to use. There is no knowing what quantity of accounting, legal, and also other support services that the project is going to source locally. Nothing. Royalties have not been reported. How much royalties are going to be paid to the local councils who are going to be impacted directly by this project? So it's a sham.
Yeah, Doctor, can you hear me?
Yes, I think I heard.
Okay. So,
yes, go ahead.
This issue is not something for today. Like even like way back, like Indian division, from Mundemba to Isangele, all those areas.
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
We have enormous natural resources. The potentials are huge, and all those resources are still being exploited as we speak. and we have no information, like the taxes, where are we paying taxes? For instance, we know that we pay taxes to La République du Cameroon for exploring our resources in Amberland, and how do you think we, the Ambazonians out there, how can we approach this issue, Because personally, I might want to go like on Twitter and push it out there, push the message to these companies that, hey, watch out, So is that something you want to advise us about? What do you think? I'm going to stay with Dr. David. I guess there's like a delay.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is highway robbery, okay? This is highway robbery. Yes, this is how, the people of Ambazonia have been robbed of a very vital source of living, which is their natural gas. Yes, I think there is a slight delay. Are you getting me?
Yeah, I can hear you 5 and 5. Yeah.
Are you getting me?
Yes.
Are you getting me?
Yes.
Are you getting me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Hello?
Okay, Prof, I'm just going to go to you while the technical team will try to fix out what is happening on his end. We're trying to figure out why the government of La République du Cameroon decided to stay quiet, and we are having this communique from over the Atlantic. So going forward, do you think there's any aspect or there's something in their mind? Are they afraid of Ambazonians? I did ask Dr. David this question, but I want to also have your perspective. Why do you think they keep quiet about it?
No, I'm not sure they kept quiet because we were all informed by reading on their Twitter account. So, and since then, what one has realized is the strength of the activists, because since then, all the information that we got came from all angles, including even the details that we are having now, things that I would never have imagined, that distinction between offshore drilling, offshore transformation, and offshore, etc. These are the kinds of things I would never have imagined. Particularly the fact that all those things would have been kept secret had the activist reaction not pushed the necessity to have information put on the table. So you see, it speaks to the strength of what is happening. But what is also happening, and I think it's essential for us to think about it. 2 years ago, let us phrase it this way. In November 20th, 2016, we were not talking about oil.
I totally agree.
And I can tell you, oil and war, these are two things. It's like oil and fire. They don't disappear. The moment we hit that ground, it is there to stay, because it is what fuels the intransigence of Biya. Nobody can explain why Biya is intransigent about federalism, about the discussion on the structure of the state, he says no, no, no. That is his interest. His interest is oil. If you have federalism, it's going to be ruled by Ambazonia itself. They will have an inroad. They will ask for all those reports. They will ask for the consideration of environment. They will ask for a dripping down of that money to the communities. They will ask for the respect of the communities that produces all that oil. They will ask to have an input, the money that goes offshore. All of those should not stay offshore. It should come to the ground, to the community of people that lives there. You will suddenly have Limbe become something like Dubai. You will have Limbe. You will have Limbe become something like Doha. You can imagine it will change the landscape. You will have everybody, all Francophones wanting to go to Amazonia because
they are already in Amazonia, and we really want them out because that's not their home.
And all that money that Biya was giving to the French, suddenly the money will be looked into because Amazonians will actually want to have a share of their own oil. That is what Biya doesn't want. Yes. You see, he would have accepted. Look how quickly he is running towards federalism. He would have accepted federalism at a moment or another, but now with oil, we hit the ground of his own intransigence. And we see that the compromise that he will not make was based on the fact that his money, the money that makes him survive politically, is in Limbe. I will really beg to have Dr. Makong explain what he's talking about offshore, because that is what you will never forget, that oil has killed so many people in Cameroon and was kept always secret. Please, I'm listening. Dr. Makong, you are back. Explain.
Yeah, Dr. David, the floor is yours.
Yes, we are listening.
Thank you. See, hey, it is simple. I want to make it look very simple. Yes, I'll make it look very simple. See, there are two ways through which you can explore and exploit either oil or gas. Can either be offshore or onshore. Offshore, to break it, make it in the middle of this, and then, onshore, on the shores, on the land, So this is the difference between the two, so that it is easy for everyone watching us, even in the village, to understand. Now, there are also ways through which an onshore project can be transformed into an offshore project. All you need to do is a very special, through which the gas is transformed, and transported. And mostly it is done to evade when you are thinking about facing transportation difficulties with pipeline. So you want to use, specially made vessels, ships, to transform and transport the oil, and also sell it offshore so that the accounting books are kept secret. Now, who knows what happens offshore? If not only those who are involved. Who knows?
So the consequence is this. Remember,
so this is a mafia.
Since 1973.
This is the mafia. This is the mafia. And I think it was in 2016.
I think Dr. David's line is...
All right.
Dr. David, can you hear me?
Okay.
Prof. Patrice, you were about to say something.
So it means we
Come
have
again.
two secrets. So it means we have two secrets.
Yeah, I'm back. Yes. Come again, please.
Yeah, we have two secrets here. We have on the one hand the offshore secret. And the other hand, you have the onshore secret. Because as we know, the management of oil since 1973 was secret, offshore or not. So we have two secrets here. And that is the two secrets that make the position of BI become so intransigent. Because activists, Southern Cameroonians, want to tap into that to finance their communities, to make Boya, Limbe, Bamenda become rich. And he doesn't want that. Please, since you are there, Dr. Makong, explain again, because I think people need to understand.
Dr. Makong, I just wanted to switch a little bit, but we are still on the topic. When you look around the world in terms of international crises, how they originate, how they are being managed, and where they're going to, I am tempted to say that we are sort of boiling back towards like the natural resources. You know, if you look at the war in Afghanistan, the war in Libya that is currently going on, you know, what happened what happened in Libya and what's happening now in Syria, it looks like it boils down to oil. Is that what you think?
Well, you're right. I think you are very correct. I mean, it's all about who controls the oil, who controls the minerals.
Exactly.
That's what it boils down to. It controls it.
There we go. So the good news there for me is that
that's it. You're right. I don't have to speculate people's.
Is all the talks we are having about human rights have been evaporated.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
See, indigenous people have a specific place in international law. They are protected, and their rights over their natural resources, you know, firmly protected. Okay, so thus the rights of the people of Amazonia over their offshore oil and onshore oil, over their offshore gas and their onshore gas fields. I used to tell people, Amazonia is extremely rich.
There we go.
There are so many oil fields in Dian, so many oil fields in Victoria. There is so much bauxite in Ekondo Titi. I mean, bauxite that can supply China for the next 25 years. There is iron ore in Victoria. There is uranium. What don't we have? There is no reason why any Southern Cameroonian should be a refugee in a neighboring country.
There we go.
I mean, an economic refugee.
There we go.
Looking for work in countries that have not been blessed with the enormity of natural resources that we have. I mean, just take, for example, only this oil deep.
I would like to say this, please. Connect it to the lack of education, the lack of a university. You know, connect it to the fact that from 1960 to 1994, there was no University of Anglo-Saxon tradition in Amazonia. That oil will have created in Limbe, in Boya, in Bamenda, in Mamfe, in Kumba, in Kumbo, all the universities you need. That oil alone. Connected to the fact that from 1916, from 1916 to 2016, there was no standing legal system of an Anglo-Saxon tradition. That oil will have financed all the lawyers that you need.
That is pretty profound, you know. And I have this big dream of Amazonia. Yeah, Dr. David, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to follow through with what Patrice said.
Okay,
I agree with him. See, any area that is blessed with natural resources like we are, look, there are just so many jobs that come around with it. We have students, most of them, some are accountants. Each and every student who graduated from school should be able to find a job. Even those who read history would be able to find work in writing, if not feasibility studies, but environmental and social impact assessment studies. There will be archaeologists. They will be giving some impetus, you know, in the way the psyche of the local people, you know, would enable them react towards the multinationals who come to exploit and export their natural resources. There is no reason why any Amazonian should go without a job. because you're going to have people working on the company that retains the license, conducting the exploration. You're going to have a new set of people, skilled labor, working on exploitation. You're going to have so many hundreds of thousands of people, either working directly or indirectly through direct employment or support services, banking, accounting, logistics, transportation. You have people out the value chain of the industry. There is no reason why any Ambazonians should go. And our struggle today is to put our suffering behind us. History will not forgive us if we end this journey halfway. History will remember us only if we complete this journey by turning the poverty of the people into wealth. Thank you.
Yes, there we go. You see.
And then, Doctor, you did mention something about indigenous people. And, for instance, here in Canada, I just want Ambazonians to know that there are indigenous people in Canada. They call them the First Nations. If the Canadian government has to explore any natural resource or push across any pipeline along those indigenous people's territory, there has to be an agreement. And the government of Canada deals with the indigenous people at a government-to-government level. It's not a community, it's a government-to-government level because they are protected by the United Nations. So you would think that we have scholars in our country that have gone through, that have done international business, that have done international relations, and all of a sudden, back home, they don't tend to look at all those corporate practices, So in your opinion, Dr. David, what is keeping them? Do they just learn the knowledge and toss it in the garbage? Why do you think there's that discrepancy?
See, they learn, but they decide to steal. Okay? Most of the biggest thieves we have today are educated people. Do you think those who rob the general managers and all the bank managers who are in prison today, they're in prison because they are dull? No, they are sophisticated people. They just decide to steal what does not belong to them. Now see, let me help La République du Cameroun with negotiations 101. Okay? With negotiations, let them benefit from this Ambazonian educative platform. When you are negotiating a deal with a multinational, okay, you have to bring this cake on the table. It's a cake. This is a national cake. It is divided into 5 components. 5. And we can help name them here. We have the national government components. We have the local government components. We have the local community components. We have the investor components. And of course, we have the NGOs components. Now you bring all these parties called stakeholders to the negotiation table. And each party defines what they want in the project. And in the end, this project is divided into 5 equal parts.
I think Dr. David's line is a little bit shaky.
With the government that owns the project, taking 1 part for the national government, only 1. So this is free negotiation 101 for La République to come. Now, if Ambazonians were to negotiate a deal like this one, Ambazonia will make it clear that the 5 components or 5 parties must sit together on the negotiation table so that the local communities are represented and they get their share. The local governments, call them the councils, they are represented and they get their share.
I would like to ask the following. We all saw the picture of the Minister of Energy and Water signing that contract.
Yeah.
Were those 5 components there?
Not to the best of my knowledge. Not to the best of my knowledge. So, gentlemen,
no,
we have just 5 more
they're
minutes.
not.
We have just 5 more minutes. We have just 5 more minutes to wrap up the show.
It was a secret.
It was a secret.
Yeah, we have just 5 more minutes to wrap up the show. And I just really want to thank you guys for being here today. I'm just going to give you 1 minute each to push out a message to Ambazonians out there. You know, we are going through, you know, a tussle with the devil. I'm just going to put it as it is. And we need those words of encouragement to bolster the morale of our people. Professor Patrice, what are you going to tell Ambazonians out there? 1 minute.
No, I will say, and I always say, there is one novel. The title of the novel is The Beautiful One Are Not Yet Born. What we are saying is that the beautiful ones are born. What does it mean to be beautiful? It means to awaken to your own intelligence. Look simply what we did in 2 hours. And remember, ask yourselves, did we have those kinds of questions 2 years ago? You realize we did not. You realize that 2 years ago, we were talking about teachers, about lawyers. They're important. They define the level of the fight. But what we did is that we went deeper. And now we have hit the most important, which is the solution to our own misery. If you have resources in your land, that resource belongs to you. There is no reason why you should be a refugee. There is no reason why you should not have roads. There's no reason why you should not have a university, thousands of universities, because you can afford that with your own money. The money coming from the land of your ancestors. And remember, we didn't talk about Sonara, SNH, those companies that signed those crooked deals.
Absolutely.
Walk through their offices. All the people working there are Francophones.
Absolutely.
All of them. Talking about the ripoff, that is one.
Yeah.
And I think the fight has started now. Thank you very much. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Because
you know, Dr. David, I lived in Ekodo City for 4 years. This is my dream, and I just want to know your dream in probably 2 minutes before we wrap up the show. I dream to see a school of petroleum in Isangele. I dream to see a polytechnic of natural resources in Mamfe. I dream to see, you know, I have all these amazing dreams for Ambazonians, you know, and we have this group of Ambazonians who believe in our plight, who understand our struggle, who acknowledge the fact that we understand what we want, but they are still lukewarm about the struggle. What do you want to tell them in 1 minute?
Thank you so very much once more for having me on this platform. Now, I want to begin ending this program by addressing La République first.
Okay.
Ambazonians are not your enemies. You have taken a lot of natural resources from Ambazonia. You have exploited Ambazonia. You have exploited the people and their resources. Stop killing them. We are not your enemies. We could be your friends. If you come to negotiate a straight deal with us, we will be your friends. Stop killing us. Now, to the people in the bushes and to all the people who are now refugees in Nigeria, and to all those with bloody noses and wounded legs, I also have a message for you. Your blood has not been spilled in vain.
Thank you.
We will make sure that we do not only pray for you, but we will work extremely hard to provide for you. We will make sure that the journey does not end where your leg ended, where your limb ended, where you fell, or where you were buried. We will make sure your story is written in Boya. And Boya will live to remember you forever. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to thank you, the panelists. It has been really awesome talking to you all. And sincerely, I cannot wait to have you some other day, some other time on this amazing platform called The Analyst. For the televiewers, for Ambazonians out there, it was a pleasure just knowing that you're out there pushing the like button, pushing the love button for this show. And we want to thank you to keep on sharing the information. Remember, knowledge is power. Remain strong. Wata na wata. Ambazonia must be free. Thank you and have a good day. Remember, stay tuned. Secretary Chris Ano is going to come live. So just stay connected. You know, he's going to give us some very interesting information about the struggle. Thank you guys and have a good one out there. Bye-bye.
Wata na wata.
The Indian Ocean island of Diego Garcia is home to a U.S. airbase that launched the most powerful bombers that were key to winning the war in Iraq. But it was also once home to an indigenous population who was summarily uprooted and shipped against their will to another island 1,200 miles away. So today, only military personnel and the workers they imported are allowed onto Diego Garcia. No outsiders can get in. But the real story is finally surfacing. On a string of beautiful coral islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean, America has built one of its most important strategic bases, Diego Garcia. Today it's home to B-52s, and now for the first time stealth bombers as well, all just 7 hours flying time from downtown Baghdad. Supply ships as big as skyscrapers, loaded with tanks, weapons and ammunition for Marine and Army brigades, gathered there before the order was given to invade Iraq. Back in the 70s, when Diego Garcia became central to American military operations, James Schlesinger, who's now in the private sector, was Secretary of Defense.
It is critical to American security and has steadily grown more critical. Indeed, it is one of the wisest investment of government funds that we have seen over the last 3 or 4 decades.
And few would disagree. 4 decades ago, when the United States and the Soviet Union were racing to get footholds in this region, the U.S. discovered Diego Garcia, a coral island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. The Americans had asked the British, their longtime allies who still had colonies in the region, to find them an uninhabited island for their base.
It's always preferable not to have inhabitants around. It reduces any risk of intelligence operations against the base and the possibility of sabotage.
But there was just one problem. There were inhabitants on Diego Garcia, and they had been living there for more than 200 years.
The children here do not have all the toys that town children play with.
This old British newsreel shows a thriving community of about 2,000 people who worked on the island's coconut plantation. But the British didn't see that as a problem. To make way for the U.S. base, they simply moved all the inhabitants 1,200 miles away to other tropical islands, Mauritius and the Seychelles. Back then, when the island was a British colony, Marcel Moulinet managed the coconut plantation. It was he who was ordered to ship the people out.
In order to have their base, what did the Americans want you to do with the island?
Total evacuation. They wanted no indigenous people there.
How did you evacuate?
Well, when the final time came and the ships were chartered, they weren't allowed to take anything with them except a suitcase of their clothes. The ships were small and they could take nothing else, no furniture, nothing.
The people of Diego Garcia say they left paradise and landed in hell when they were dumped here in the urban slums of Mauritius. They had brought no possessions, and as islanders who had lived off fishing and farming, they had no real professional skills. No one helped them resettle or paid for the homes they lost. They simply were forced to become squatters in a foreign land. Before the final evacuation, the British had cut off the ships that carried food and medicine to Diego Garcia. Jeanette Alexis's family was one of the last to leave.
My father was told that we had to leave the island because the Americans were moving in and it wasn't safe to remain on the island anymore.
They say they didn't force people off the island.
I mean, if you stop feeding me, if you don't give me work, you bring in sheep and you tell me that this is the last trip, otherwise if I stay back, I will starve to death. What other force do you need to get me out?
The islanders say the other force that got them out was fear, when British officials ordered their pets to be exterminated. They were gassed with exhaust fumes from American military vehicles. It's hard to believe that people would do that.
Yes, in fact it did happen, and you can imagine the pressure that put on the population there. It was just terrible for people.
When you boarded that ship, finally, for your last trip out of Diego Garcia, what do you remember?
We were crying. We were hanging onto our mother's skirt, crying, because although we were very young, we understood that we were leaving something very, very valuable behind, and that was our home.
And for the next 30 years, the world never knew what had happened to Diego Garcia's original people. No outsiders are allowed onto Diego Garcia, so this secret stayed hidden until one of the exiled islanders, Olivier Bancoul, started organizing his community. He was angry by the years of misery that his people had been forced to endure. 3 of his own brothers drank themselves to death, dispirited by their poverty and unemployment. One of his sisters was so homesick that she committed suicide.
It's very sad. This is why I will never give up. All the difficulty is because of the US and the UK. They have turned people's life into a nightmare.
So 3 years ago, Olivier traveled to London to take the British government to court. His big break came when he and his lawyer, Richard Gifford, found secret documents that had recently been declassified that described the agreement between the United States and British governments to build the base on Diego Garcia.
Here we have the legal expert in the Foreign Office, in which he's got a paragraph headed, "Maintaining the Fiction."
The fiction that Diego Garcia had no native people. These British documents show colonial officials thought that no one would notice if they deported the islanders. Were you surprised when you started digging at the memos you found between the Americans and the British?
I find it rather shameful, yes. Here we have a rather interesting little memorandum of the British government. There will be no indigenous population except seagulls.
Another British document confirms that evicting the people and leaving the island to the seagulls was done at the request of the United States. It reads, "The United States government will require the removal of the entire population of the atoll by July." The Americans telling that to the British?
Yes, and the British were only too happy to oblige.
And what did the British get in return for providing the Americans a population-free island? Polaris missiles for their submarines. The US reduced the price by $14 million, or 5 million British pounds.
Well, you have to understand that the stiff upper lips hardly quivered at the idea of moving the population.
Didn't care.
So £5 million was a massive incentive compared with a very modest conscience problem.
Uncovering this paper trail brought Gifford and Bancoul a stunning victory. Britain's highest court ruled that deporting Diego Garcia's native population was illegal. But the euphoria didn't last long because the court didn't propose a remedy, neither money nor what the people wanted most, to return home and the right to earn a living on the base. Do you think, given the security situation right now, the war on terrorism, do you think they will ever really be able to go back to Diego Garcia?
The position of the islanders is that they never objected to the US base on Diego, but the islanders are extremely bitter that they are denied employment on the base, precisely because they come from there.
especially since the base employs several thousand civilian workers from other countries like the Philippines. Benoit Emilien used to recruit those civilian employees.
That's me again with the commanding officer.
Your job was to find workers to work on that top-secret American base. Were native Diego Garcians ever allowed to go back and work there?
Definitely no.
Why not?
I was given instruction to be careful. They don't want any kind of claim or demonstration.
And when Benoit tried to talk to his American friends on the base about Diego Garcia's original inhabitants, he found the subject was taboo.
It's like this, they stay away, like...
they don't want to know?
No, they don't want to know.
And they don't want visitors. When the islanders asked to visit their family graves, they were told in this letter from the British government that the US had to grant permission. It reads, "We have consulted the US authorities who have confirmed that they cannot agree to it at the present time." So last August, the islanders appealed directly to President Bush. But the Bush administration said it was Britain's call. This letter reads, "Because of the vital role the facility plays in the global war on terrorism, British authorities have denied permission to visit Diego Garcia. We concur and support the decision." Qasem Youtim, the former president of Mauritius, had written the letter to President Bush on behalf of the islanders.
So both sides are essentially passing the buck.
That's what they're doing. That's exactly what they are doing. I think that it is most not only inhuman, but illegal. They should never have been expelled from their land.
We tried repeatedly to interview anyone from the British and American governments about this affair, but no one from the British Foreign Office, the US State Department, or the Pentagon would even talk to us. But Dan Urish did talk to us. Back then, he was the American commander on Diego Garcia.
In retrospect, do you think that they were treated fairly, these people?
You know, I have a great sympathy for them. I think the British are the ones that are probably legally responsible for it. Morally, the U.S. certainly has an interest in seeing that things are made right for the islanders.
And until that happens, Olivier Bancoul, Jeanette Alexis, and the rest of the islanders say they'll never give up. Now they are suing both the United States and British governments for compensation and the right to return.
It's an important base, I agree.